are getting irritated with Clem. It's a fawn feather?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Artemis channel. We're back to our podcast, In the Blind. Today we're going to be recapping our hunt on a deer we call the Dude. So the Dude is my biggest whitetail to date. We had an experience with him that encompasses cat toy again.
Well, now it doesn't go off on
Sure,
touch.
now it doesn't go off, yeah.
Son of a bitch.
It was a hunt that encompassed 2 seasons of us chasing this guy around. In the end, I think it's his own arrogance that got him killed, but there was a stretch where he was. I still think he's probably not the biggest deer on that mountain that we're hunting, but he is among
close to it.
He was close to the biggest deers up there. We were e-scouting and hiking August, because the blackberries were ripe. Okay, so it may have even been early September. And I marked a spot on Onyx that I wanted to check out. And I said to the guys that this is freshly logged, and this spot here's got a funnel that's going to funnel the deer into this area of this clear cut. And we're going to get in there, and it's 2 years old, and this is going to be mowed down with blackberries, and they're going to be full of deer sign. And this one, if you remember correctly, rolls his eyes at me, didn't believe anything that I was saying, but went along for the hike anyway. And
that area was actually not that easy to pass through because of the blackberries and the sticks and branches and stuff from the logging and all of that.
It was deer heaven because we got in there and it was like we drew it up on a playbook. It's exactly what I said it was going to be. And we walked around and looked at deer sign, and I picked a tree that I said they're going to come down in these intersection. They're going to come to the intersection of these 2 logging roads, and I'm going to set up here in a bow stand. I had a self-climbing stand that I used, and I picked a spot. And as it turned out, on opening weekend, I was wrong by 60 yards. And I got up there probably 2 hours before sunset, and maybe 15-20 minutes sunset-ish. Out comes this nice, good-sized fork. And well, that's a nice deer, and he's coming across this hillside like this at about 60 yards. And behind him is, at that point, the biggest deer that I'd ever seen was a wide 8. And then after him comes the Dude. And this is the biggest deer I've ever seen. And he gets to the edge of this. So the logging roads kind of do this. And then it's all pricker bushes and blackberries, and they're going away from this opening, and this deer comes out to this opening, and he starts with this because he's trying to sniff, and he locks eyes with me, and between me and him there's a hemlock like this, so I'm looking through a hemlock, and I'm completely camoed with the bow up in front of me to break up, this. And he is looking right at me, and I'm like, there is no way you can see me. And you could kind of see his body language go, whatever. And him and the other 2 guys went about their business. And I think the 3 of us came up with naming those 3 deer, Donny, Walter, and the Dude from The Big Lebowski.
Hi, I'm the Dude, man.
Everything from there was then filtered through those sightings, and we see a big buck track, and that's him, and then we see this buck track, that's the Dude, and from that point on, everything was about that deer.
Were you listening to the Dude's story?
I had gone with Tom on a Sunday morning, And he and I are set up on a raised little knoll in this clear-cut area. And I set up a couple of calling sequences where I tipped a can and then I grunted. And I waited 15 to 20 minutes and I tipped a can and I grunted. And I tipped a can again. And before we knew it, this giant, not the dude, is on top of us. And he is at 7 yards to my right. And I had already made my mind up that I wasn't shooting a deer unless he came into this spot, because I want Tom to be able to shoot him, but Tom is to my left so he can't shoot. So I went for a heart shot, and probably at that distance with a rifle I was far too low, and gave him a haircut. And Tom and I waited probably half an hour, and we started a blood trail, and we went half a mile and backed out.
Probably felt like more than that, but it was all on the cliff face.
Okay. We backed out, called Clem. He got out of work. He came up. It was a Saturday or a Sunday. I don't remember now. It might have been a Saturday. And we waited until 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, it had to be because we were out till dark.
Yeah. And we chased this blood trail a mile up this mountain before we lost it. And I called a bunch of trackers, couldn't get anybody to come out and help, and two separate trackers asked me separate questions about how the shot went and where I think I shot him and where I think I hit him and how long we waited and all that. And each one of them said separately that they thought that the good news was that I was going to get another shot at him, and the bad news was that he wasn't in the freezer. We never did see that deer again, so I do believe that he
It was a long trail, but it wasn't a lot of blood.
No, there was a couple spots where he stopped, but I mean, it's a lot of things that could kill that deer. Somebody else could have shot it. The coyotes could have got him. Anything could have happened. But we haven't seen that deer since. And I think it was Vinatieri, one that had come in to another stand that we've got, and he was just a really nice giant of a deer, beautiful deer. So that kind of ruined my hunt, and I took the following day off, which was a Sunday, and I said, I'm going to take a day off. I'm tired from hiking up that mountain twice, and I'm going to sit here and watch the Pats game. And the following weekend, we went up and checked cards, and here's the dude on game camera, 50 yards from one of our stands that at this hour, we may or may not have been sitting there, but certainly we would have sat there at some point during the course of that day. So he was checking this mock scrape that you guys can see here, and just I was beside myself that I took the day off and he was out there. We didn't see him the rest of that season, didn't have him on camera the rest of that season. We do have some tracks where my father-in-law had cleaned up a maple that had come down in the winter, and we think he was in there eating the end of the branches that they do. And I think I've got pictures of that. If I do, I'll put them up here. And that was the end of it. We didn't see him. Went to Texas, filled the freezer, had a great hunt. But missing that first one really kind of soured me on. I didn't want to miss another deer, I can tell you that. So that was, I know a lot of guys have missed deer and tracked deer and not been able to recover them, but that was my first experience with it, and not one that I care to repeat.
Well, you were all thrown off. You were only 7 to 10 yards away from the thing, so you were all thrown off. It really wasn't fair.
No, and I went for a cute shot, and I was very arrogant in my shot placement. If I'd have just took a nice broadside in the shoulder, I don't want to waste any meat, and I'm gonna go for the heart shot. And if I'd have just taken a double lung shot, like a bow shot, he was quartering to, and if I'd have just been a little more patient, I probably would have had a nice double lung shot, and we wouldn't have gone far at all. But beside the point, it's a lesson learned. So the following year, we go out, we put out cameras, and it's a September, first cold front in September comes in, and here's this monster deer on the cell phone cameras going off. And I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, do we have a dog then?
No.
No, we didn't have the dog then. So I got up, I was awake at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the cell phone cameras went off at like 2, which I didn't see, but I checked those at 5, and I'm looking, I'm like, wow, this is a big deer. Look at the size of this one. I think this is the same deer from last year. I think this is him. 5:30, the camera goes off, and it's this shot of the dude looking down the hill. And I'll let Clem tell you why he's looking down the hill.
I went up on my own.
Yeah.
And I was bare. That's right. I went up dark 30.
5:37.
Well, is when I got up there. I mean, I was there long before that, and I was going up after the bear, and I took my time, went really slow. I, didn't want to get overheated and sweaty and all of that, and I just crept up through the orchard, and I thought that was at the end of the Sapline Road. He was looking down from the top as I was going by. Wasn't sure if I had heard anything at that point, but when I went further up, he doubled around back across the top of the ridge, which every little noise you think is something, and a lot of times you just dismiss it. But I know that there were a couple of times that I heard him move and just dismissed it, thought it was something else. It was still pitch dark. And when I went around, and there's a spot where it crests, and you go through a break in the wall, and there's a stone wall there at the top of the ridge, and he had come around. He had gone in front of me this time, and I had no idea. Again, it was pitch dark, and about 8 or 10 paces to my left, right on the stone wall, as I crossed the stone wall, he started to snort at me. And he's huffing. And I took my camera out, and
Well, you called me.
I still have the video.
Did you call me after?
I called after because I held the phone up so that I could see the stars because it was still dark, but you can hear this deer snorting at me. he was mad, and then he took off.
Do you still have that?
But he was big. I do believe I still have
If you have that, send it to me and we'll put it in here.
And it was funny. It was all I could do not to laugh out loud, just because it was pitch dark. I couldn't see him. He couldn't see me. Obviously, he could smell me and hear me. And I had been hearing him all along. And I just thought it was so funny that he was that close. And he was upset with me. And then I did. I called Steve. I said, Steve, I got to send you this video that I just took. You got to turn the volume up, but you'll hear it. Because I played it back, and I could hear it there in the woods. And I just kind of sat there and chuckled to myself.
So I said to Clem at that point that, okay, we know he made it through the winter. We know he made it through the summer. He knows we're hunting. We won't see him again for a month. And it was a little bit more than that before he showed up on camera again. It was November, and we had him on camera a couple of times. And this was the year that we had very little hard mass. There was no acorns, no beech nuts, and somebody else had clued us in that the deer were already in the hemlocks in their winter areas. So we hunted the shit out of that.
Hard.
I mean, we hunted a 500-yard square area based on wind. We hunted this spot because we knew, as I like to say, we had the keys to the brothel, and it was just a matter of time before the boys came calling.
Because we saw plenty of girls too.
Yeah, and we were seeing deer
all the time.
Regular. I want to say every other time we went out, we were seeing deer. So Tom, at the time, was finishing his degree, and he, after class, you decided to sit.
Yeah, I brought all my stuff to go hunting, and then after classes got out in the afternoon, I went and sat in the stand right at sunset, and the stand that you eventually shot the dude out of. And I always like to point out that this little piece of intel that I had that night was what helped him get the deer. So I'm sitting in the stand and nothing's really happened, and then I hear all this rustling from behind me, and I look, bend all the way back to look, and there's the tree line, and then underneath the tree line I see the belly and the socks of the moose as it's walking. So there's a moose back there, there's a cow. I assume it's a cow because right behind it are the smaller, closer together feet of a deer. And based on my limited knowledge of whitetail is that whitetail bucks don't really hang around bull moose, and bull moose usually like to be left alone. So I come home and tell them what I saw.
And I get up the next morning, the alarm goes off at dark 30, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed and I look at your mother and I said, there's no way that Tom saw a moose and
A deer together.
a deer together. And that if he saw anything, I think he saw the dude and the dude and a doe.
You're not interested in sex?
You mean coitus?
I like it too. It's a male myth about feminists that we hate sex.
As it turns out, the way he described it later was accurate. I think he did see the moose. I don't question it at all.
Whitetail deer are not two-toned in the legs.
And we know that the dude's not that from the pictures. So I get to the stand and I get there early enough, and I'm before a solid half an hour before legal shoot, and I sit and I look at my phone, and legal shooting is 6:16, and I look at my phone, okay, 6:16, I put my phone away. 10 minutes and there's a layer of crusty ice. We had gotten half an inch of snow with a layer of crusty ice on there. Just enough to make it really crunchy. You could not sneak.
Yeah.
And I had gone up when I had walked into the stand, instead of just walking in like a man, I went in and went, and I broke my cadence up as I walked in there. And I think he heard me because it wasn't 10 minutes, and I hear this animal crashing through the adjoining property uphill from us. And we know from doing where we do the maple orchard, if you've seen our maple episode, check it out here. Our maple syrup episode, check it out here. We know from doing the maple syrup that the area that we've got all the maple lines in, there's very little undergrowth, and the adjoining property is brambles and pricker bushes and saplings and previously logged. It's good habitat. It's swampy and a lot of water and that edge habitat that deer like very much. And this deer comes crashing through, and I can hear him on all this crunchy ice and snow, and he gets to the top of that property and he stops. And I can't see him because there's too much foliage, or not foliage, but too many trees between me and him. But I know where he is, and I'm thinking, that son of a bitch is standing up there all majestic, looking down here, and I give him one grunt on the grunt tube, and he come down off of that mountain.
Ready to fight.
Yeah, he was looking for trouble. And that's why I say I think his arrogance got him killed. He comes straight towards me for 25 or 30 yards, and then he cut across the hillside, side hill where he was trying to pick up my wind. But the wind, I had complete wind advantage. The wind was in my face. He wasn't going to wind me. And he got across the side of this hillside, and he disappeared. And it's Now I'm 10, 15 minutes into legal shooting. I can shoot. I can't see him. There's just enough snow cover and broken leaves coming through the snow that he's gone. And I'm looking at him. I got the binoculars and I got my spotting scope and I'm looking and I'm trying to find him and I can't see him. And I'm like, I know that son of a bitch is right there. And then the tail flicks and I'm able to get him. And I just sit and I wait, and he turns and comes down the hill towards me, and all I can see is this big wide beam of antlers. And I didn't stop to identify which deer it was once I could hear my friend Gene talking to me, when Gene always says, Steve-O, once you know you're shooting that deer, don't look at the antlers anymore.
That's not what you're shooting at.
And he come down, and all of this goes on. He takes a solid 5 minutes as he's walking down. He is really taking his time. And he comes across at 45, 50 yards, 40 yards, parallel to where I am, and he stops and gives me an absolute perfect broadside shot. I don't have to merp him. I don't have to do anything. And because all of this goes through your head, I cannot believe this guy is giving me a perfect broadside shot, and I let him have it. And he whirls and doubles back to where he was going, and
Straight up the hill.
Straight up the hill.
Headed towards me.
Headed towards where Clem was. Clem was 400 or 500 yards that way. And I'm thinking to myself, I do not want to chase this deer. And sure enough, he gets the top of that hill right 10 yards from the property line, leans against a tree of some type, kicks over backwards, and he's done. So I text these guys, deer down. And in my mind, I'm thinking I want to tell him it's the dude, but I can't be sure.
Well, you didn't text me. You texted him because I was working.
No, you were at the gym. It was 6:30 and 6:35.
But I didn't have to work that day.
You had to work that day. So I texted the both of you that deer was down. Then I got up, I got down out of the stand, and I left the gun attached to my lifeline. So I walked away and the gun went, so I thought that was kind of funny, and I laughed, unhooked it from the lifeline because I had lowered it, right? And I got up and I blood trailed him like you're supposed to, and it's just like Tom's Texas deer. There was somebody, you went in there with a bucket dumping blood, and I can see the tree that he leaned up against, and it's just as
It was. It's like you painted it.
yeah, and I can't see the deer. And I'm not panicking, but I'm looking, going, where the hell is this deer? And he had kicked backwards and slid down behind this rock, and that's where he had expired, right there next to the rock. I think I called you first, and then I called Clem, and I called your mother, because your mother's already? I'm like, are you kidding me? We've been hunting this guy 2 years. It's already. I knew what she meant, early in the morning.
Well, I had just gotten to my spot and I heard the shot. And
I was driving home.
Either Steve got shot or he shot something. There was no time for me to tell him, here's the big deer coming, and I'm going to let you know. No, he was coming. That deer was looking for a fight, and Clem and I took the grip and grin, and we field dressed him, and it was a nice double lung shot. There was no lungs in the animal. Took him down and got him weighed and registered. I was disappointed. Didn't even hide my disappointment, and he came in at 189, which is a really nice deer. I thought I was going to get a patch. I really thought he was going to be 200 pounds. And
he looked it. He looked every bit of 200 pounds.
And the old gentleman at the sports shop where we checked him in, he slaps him on the ass and he says, if you'd have got him last week, you'd have had a 200-pound deer.
That's right.
And we loaded him up and came home. Brought him over and left him with the butcher. And Clem didn't want to go back out. His feet were wet, and and I was good. As we discussed in the Texas thing, I had been anti-taxidermy. I'm all about the Euro mounts. I like that look. But when it comes to taxidermy, I don't want any of that crap here. And I walked up and I grabbed a hold of that deer and I held on to it. I said, oh yeah, that's going on a wall. So I bring him to the butcher shop and I say, yep, cape him out. Yep, do this. Yep, do that. And I don't have any clue of where I'm bringing him to do taxidermy. I just know I'm going to do it. Didn't ask your mother. Didn't discuss it at all. Come home and I walk into the kitchen and she's getting her breakfast ready and I said, so I'm thinking about having him done. And she walks into
Decision's already been made.
She walks in the living room and goes, put him right here. And I said, for real? And she said, yep. She says, you guys hunted this deer for 2 years. When are you going to do that again? As an adult onset hunter, it's your first real time that you've hunted a specific deer. You may never get this opportunity again here in New Hampshire. Put him up there. You guys will talk about this deer for the rest of
Especially
your
when
life.
that impressive.
Yeah, it's a nice deer. We've talked about getting him scored, and we might. I think he's going to be solidly in the 130 class. I don't think he's going to be in the 140s. It doesn't really matter. That's a nice New Hampshire deer with a great story that I can share with my two best hunting buds, and we've still got a little bit of venison left, so I can't say that I'm hoarding it, but I want it to go all the way through summertime, so I got something to grill.
The dude abides.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast today. If you like what you see here, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.